No! Stop right there. Thank you. Ha! See? Told you all it takes is an authoritative voice. Told you that I get exactly what I wanted. Oh, don't feel bad. It's not your fault that you've been made to look like a complete and utter idiot. I told you no scrolling text. You had the choice, now I win, and you look like a complete and utter nutter. Ha! See? That's all it takes. Anyway, we've made it. Super Return of the Jedi. And what better way to celebrate the end of the Star Wars series on the Super Nintendo than on Star Wars Day. Happy Star Wars Day, everyone! Well, the game is based on the film Return of the Jedi, and let's be honest, it's a pretty good film. It wraps up the entire story of the original trilogy, and we see the end of the Empire, we see Leia and Han finally hook up, hooray! And we see the Rebel Alliance beating the bad guys and being awesome. Nice. Once again, the game more or less follows the story, with slight alterations here and there to accommodate for the fact that this is an action game. Fans of the Star Wars films will recognise more familiar levels, such as Outside the Sail Barge and the chase on speeders through Endor. As with yesterday, it seems like a complete waste of time to re-mention everything that we've already said about the looks, the sounds and the gameplay. They all still look the same and they all still look great. However, like with yesterday, it makes far more sense for us to look at the new things in Super Return of the Jedi and comment on those. So that's what we're going to do. The third game in the series has the biggest roster of playable characters. There are now 5 different characters to play as at some point through the game. Luke, Han and Chewbacca have now been joined by Princess Leia and Wicket the Ewok. You only get a choice of certain characters for any level to help the consistency of the game. After all, it would make little sense to play as Han Solo on the first level, where you were heading up to Jabba the Hutt's palace to rescue Han Solo. Luke's force powers have been given an upheaval as well. Now, rather than 20 odd powers which we were given in The Empire Strikes Back, which you never used, he now has less force powers, but each of them feels much more useful for the game. Indeed, chances are you will probably find a use for each of them as you play through certain levels in Super Return of the Jedi. As with the previous Star Wars games, this one, Super Return of the Jedi, is no easy nut to crack. The Super Star Wars games are known for being very difficult, and generally I don't think that one is more or less difficult than the others. Personally, in my opinion, I would probably say that the second one, Super Empire Strikes Back, is the most difficult, but that's just an opinion. They are all very difficult games. However, the developers appear to have been aware of the difficulty of the previous games and have dropped little helps in this game. Rather than just make the game easier to pander to wimpy fans, Super Return of the Jedi gave you help in other ways. The number of lives available throughout the levels are much more, and not only that, but scattered around the levels are now Rebel Alliance logos, which act in a similar fashion to gold coins in Mario. Pick up 100 of these bad boys and you are given an extra life. Sweet. Don't think that Super Return of the Jedi is going to be a walkover, because you will be sorely disappointed. However, rather than make the game easier, what the developers have done have made the game fairer, which, in all honesty, is all we were ever asking for. We didn't mind that the games were difficult, we just had a problem with the fact that they were so unfair. Secondly, let's talk about the force powers. In Super Empire Strikes Back, we were given so many that half of them we just never used. Well, what they've done for this game is they've sifted through the force powers that we were given and got rid of all the rubbish ones. No more will you see Force Vodka Martini or Force Cross the Road. However, they've left in the really useful ones and just got rid of the ones that we didn't need. Thanks. Luckily, Force Heal still makes an appearance, and is now joined by the very useful Force Saber, which throws your lightsaber around the screen, letting you control it. Once again, the Force Power Bar is back, so you can't just use these powers whenever you want, but must conserve them. However, the Force icons to refill your power bar are more abundant. Again, not an easier game, just a fairer game. Let's talk about one of the new characters in particular, Princess Leia. Ugh! Girls are so rubbish at fighting. Why would you want to play as Princess Leia, right? Wrong. Princess Leia is one of the best characters in this game, for one reason in particular. There are 3 different incarnations of her. 3! I know! At the beginning of the game, you get Leia Bush, which is not what you were thinking, but moves similar to Luke. Then you get Leia Slave. Nuff said. Then later on, you get Leia Rebel, whilst attacking the power generator. Each of the 3 have their uses, and are different enough to make for an interesting time. To say that Leia was only introduced as a playable character in this game, she makes a huge impact, and quickly became my second favourite character to play as. Yes! After all this waiting, finally, the Millennium Falcon. Playable as you would expect. Yes! You have shooting turret levels, sure, but these are joined by third person and even first person flying levels. After my complaints about the rubbish Millennium Falcon bit in the second game, it's nice to see that someone was listening. Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what it was. Yeah, of course, someone was listening to me. Anyway, thank you, whoever is responsible for making my second experience of driving the Millennium Falcon a memorable one. In a good way. And finally, the levels need a mention. In the Super Empire Strikes Back review, I pointed out that so many of the levels look the same. There wasn't enough variety. Well, I'm glad to say that this is a huge improvement in Super Return of the Jedi. Each level now looks completely different from the previous. It just makes the game more memorable and enjoyable to play. The graphics are so good, why should I have to look at level after level of exactly the same stuff? Overall, a very good end to the Super game franchise. The Mode 7 levels are back. Whilst the Millennium Falcon ones are great because it's the Millennium Falcon, all the flying levels are still not fantastic. They are a huge improvement over the last game, but I still find myself very underwhelmed by them. It's just the same monotony again and again. They're an improvement, and at least now they aren't all bouncing aimlessly around trying to shoot enemies, but I still don't think that I would miss them if they weren't included. Ewoks. They're cute, they're cuddly, and they can kick some serious butt when they need to. But why am I playing as one? There are 2 levels in which you have to play as Wicket, but they don't fit in the game. Neither of them add anything to the game or the story. They're just added in the middle of the game to fit an Ewok level in. And I don't want one. The enemies are repetitive, generic, and feel forced. This is a Star Wars game. Why am I shooting dragonflies and frogs as a giant teddy bear? Super Return of the Jedi is good in lots of ways. However, evident from the Ewok levels, it wavers a little from the storyline of the film. Probably the most out of all the games. Once again, I don't have a problem with this, but I know that some people out there still moan about it, so it's worth a mention. Funny how the second game in the series is the one that is most similar to the film, and it's also the game that is the most rubbish. Whoa, don't spam attack me, I'm just saying. When I was a kid, Super Return of the Jedi was the game that I owned out of the Super Star Wars series, and I stand by my opinion that it is the best out of the three. The improvements in this game don't just feel like improvements for the sake of it, but actually add to the gameplay. The sounds, gameplay and looks are better than they've ever been, and generally, this game, in my opinion, is the most enjoyable out of all of them. It's not perfect. For a film series that centres so much on lots of flying around, the flying levels suck in all three of the games. However, Super Return of the Jedi is definitely the best out of the three of them, and ends the series really well. A very decent 84% for Super Return of the Jedi. Well, happy Star Wars Day to each and every one of you, and as always, thanks for checking in. Now, what you don't want to do is miss the next review, because I have planned one of the biggest and best Super Nintendo games available to review. Now trust me when I say you don't want to miss that one. It's gonna be huge. So make sure you join in. See you there.